Welcome to Thriver TV, the place to break free with true solutions to heal for real from narcissistic abuse and painful relationship patterns. More than just information to survive, you are granted the tools to thrive. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about a pretty deep and dark topic, which is how a narcissist is inherently evil and how that has manifested and affected you, and why evil is actually synonymous with powerlessness, which you may not have realized, and how you can take your power back in the face of evil. But before we get going on this dynamite topic today, I want you to remind you, if you haven't already, to make sure you click the subscribe button, and also remember to like and share this video if you find it helpful. Okay, let's get going. So let's have a look at how a narcissist descended into evil. What does that mean? Okay, once upon a time, I really didn't believe in evil. But now what I understand as what we would identify as evil is the extinguishing of a false self. A true self, which is a wholeness and a wholesomeness, is a connection, is a oneness to God, source, higher consciousness, life force, infinite intelligence, goodness, love, whatever you want to call it. So evil, I believe, is darkness. It's when there is a disconnection from the light, from source. And when we have an individual who is disconnected from God, love, source, well, then they're in the darkness. They're in a false self, which is not a part of a oneness. It's an entity, an egoic entity of me versus you. It's an entity of separation from the oneness, from the source. And we may look at it in a biblical sense of satanic, Luciferian. Now, whether that's an artificial intelligence or an actual entity, I'm not here to have a religious discussion. I'm here really to talk about dark and light. But what has happened with a narcissist is, as themselves, as a true self, which means an authentic self, they don't believe, for whatever reason, that they can have their needs met and be effective. So what they've done is they've disconnected from authentic self to be a false self, which is separated from the oneness, and then that takes on the darkness. So what happens when we're in the presence of evil or that darkness? What happens when you're actually involved with a person that has disconnected from source and the oneness, who's in the darkness? We know, chances are, because you're watching this video, you know exactly how that feels. It feels like a black ink that's permeated your cells. It feels like you're poisoned. It feels like you have a literal psychic virus, an entity that's living on within you. And even if you get away from that person, you feel like that entity, that dark entity, is still living on within your very being. So what happens when we've been poisoned at that level, when we've been infiltrated by that evil, that darkness? It means that we, through that black ink, through that infiltration, through that poison, is we get disconnected from that oneness, from that source, We don't feel safe to be in our authenticity and our true self. And what this has been described as by people like Paul Levy, and I've written about this before, it's called Wedico, which is the virus of unconsciousness. And when somebody's disconnected from source, which a narcissist is, well, then they're in the unconsciousness of, I am not the generative source of my own experience. And this is what happens when we get disconnected from source. We get out of that personal power and we believe that life is happening to us and that we're a victim and that we're helpless, which is actually not the deeper truth. But in that place of victimization, this is where we feel trauma. This is where we feel wounded. This is where, because we don't believe that we have power or the ability to be ourselves and be safe in our body and in life and with situations and people, we're going to put up defense mechanisms. And it's so interesting because whenever we're trying to defend, it's coming from a place of fear and false beliefs, which means the things that we're trying to defend and keep ourselves safe from a position of fear, means that we're going to keep unconsciously generating more of the patterns and people and situations that we fear. And this takes you further away from God, source, higher consciousness. And in that separation, in that disconnection, what is happening there is that you are not able to be at one with the power of source and life force and pro-life and creating health and power and truth and expansion. You're cut off from that, which means you are on your own, having to pit yourself against life in a fearful way, which is what a narcissist does. A narcissist does it from a place of maliciousness and also not caring about how it affects everybody or what they do. Conscienceless behavior. That's not you. You still have a conscience. You're not malicious, but you're cut off from support, power, synchronicity that's going to help you, and even miracle. You can take back your power. This is the most important part about this, because evil is actually synonymous with powerlessness. Why is that the case? I'm just going to tell you this. God, light, source, consciousness always has the last say. The light wins always. Evil is false power. It's fear, it's hatred, it's pain. It's parasitical. It feeds off these things. A false self is not a true self. A true self is connected to source, sourcing power through true source. A false self is cut off from that. They don't have their own energy source. So what does a false self need to sustain itself? It needs your fear and pain. It's a parasite. It needs to suck your terror, your confusion, your fear, your heartbreak, your pain, your resentment, your anger, whatever it is, whatever is your negative emotion, a false self needs that to suck off, to get the power to exist, to hurt you. And this is the thing, because when you detach from that and you do the work inside you to heal, you take your power back and the illusion drops. The fear goes. And the more you anchor into true self-power, you start to view this parasitical creature or creatures or groups or whatever it is that you know is operating as a false self, pathologically lying, trying to scare you, trying to get you into a powerless, helpless, victimized state, the illusion drops. You see the truth. And you know that that person, people or group are actually scared creatures behind the curtain, hiding behind a front. These are actually scared, terrified people that can only exist and operate if you're in fear. When you take your power back, you see the truth, that the light wins. And this is where the myth of vampires comes in. There is so much truth in the myth of vampires. It is talking about narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths is what the vampire myth is all about. That this is not a true self. This is not an entity that can sustain its own energy force. It needs to suck energy out of people. And when you wake up to the truth and you no longer consent to that, and you no longer hand your power and your fear away and consent to being a sacrificial lamb on the altar to a parasite or a narcissist, which means going along with it, hooking in, trying to force them to change or wake up or treat you decently, rather just detaching and saying, this is not my reality. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to say it's okay. I don't consent. I'm not going along with this anymore. I'm going to detach, power up, and move on and create my truth, standing up for my rights and who I am. When you do that, you will know how powerless this evil is, this entity is. So I hope you can feel this cellularly in your body. I hope that you understand what I'm talking about in regard to taking your power back. I've seen it work in my own life and thousands of other people's lives as well. How true this is. How you will cut off the narcissistic supply, which is your fear and your pain and your anguish. And that person has got to get out of your experience when you power up. Because like a vampire with your bright light, you've seen the movies. They cringe, they have to crawl away, or they may even start disintegrating. They cannot be in the light of an authentic true self. They cannot be in the presence of God, higher consciousness, and source. So, all right. What I would love you to do if you want to take this further, I offer you my free quiz, which is about 11 telltale signs. And what this is going to do, it's going to help you confirm if you have been with a narcissist, what level of narcissistic abuse, evil you've been dealing with, and it also provides you with 7 days of information to help you navigate your way out of this crisis powerfully, authentically. So I really hope that this has helped, and as always, I look forward to answering your comments and your questions below. And until next time, keep smiling, keep healing, and keep thriving, because there's nothing else to do. Lots of love. Bye-bye.